how do you securely store usernames and passwords on a user's machine so that they don't have to enter them in all the time? I'll say up front, I don't like any of the solutions that I've seen, and you'll see why later. So a surprising number of programs will actually store them in plain text on the computer and rely on the operating system's file protection system, which means the file containing the password, username and password, will be restricted to maybe one user. So only one user on the machine, and that could be the admin, actually has access to that username and password. And in doing so, it does provide a certain degree of protection, but you still have it in plain text. Do something stupid, or if something gets compromised, it's game over. At this point, I'm sure people would say, well, encrypt the password then. Okay, wise guy, where are you going to store the encryption key? You see, you could hide it on the hard drive somewhere, but once a hacker knows where to find the encryption key, then they just steal it and the file containing the username and password, and they're done. Likewise, you could theoretically store the encryption key in the program itself, but then a hacker could download this program on their computer, reverse engineer it, extract the encryption key, and then they can decrypt the username and password stored by your program on any other machine. A third option would be to generate the encryption key from using something like a hardware ID as a seed. And that might actually work in a lot of cases, with the caveat that if the user changes their hardware, they have to re-enter their password because access to the encrypted password login details is gone. The most secure method that I know of is to actually use the usernames. You have a master password. So this is the way that password managers like LastPass or Bitwarden, or the ones that might be built into the operating system, work. So then the encryption key is locked in behind a master password, or the master password becomes the seed that generates the encryption key, which means the encryption key is different on everybody's machines, and only the user themselves have access to that one. And that's, as I say, that's probably the most secure option. Might not work for all applications, because you do need the user to enter that master password in before your software would have access to it. Now, there is an alternative that can sort of help, and I say sort of, and that is, where possible, to use an access token to access a server instead of the username and password. And I know, you might think, hey, but then you need to store the access token, and you have the same, how do you securely store that you have with the username and password? Yes, that using an access token instead of the actual username and password does two things. First, if someone does manage to steal it, they still don't have your username and password. So you can delete the access token, revoke it, so to speak, on the server, generate a new one, and things are still secure. Second, you can program an access token to be restricted in what can be accessed with it. If you're familiar with GitHub and you use Git over HTTPS with GitHub, you will know you have to generate an access token, and when you do that, GitHub will give you a whole list of what do you want this access token to be able to access. So what that means is you limit the amount of damage done if that access token is compromised by saying it can only do these specific things on the server with this access token. So I would say use an access token where you can. Do use the operating system's protection features. If the operating system has a password manager built in, might be worth using that. Otherwise, I think you do have to accept that there is no perfect secure method of storing usernames and passwords on a user's machine. Now, there might be techniques I don't know about or I haven't talked about. I haven't talked about hardware security modules because they tend to be, last I checked, they tend to be kind of expensive and they're not built into an average user's machine. So that's often not an option anyway. Anyway, if you do know of a technique I haven't talked about, please share it. Share it in the comments below or send it to me in an email and I can tell people about it. That's it for now. I will see you next time.